It's 2 a.m. The house is completely quiet. Everyone else is asleep. And there you are, wide awake, having what feels like the most important conversation of your life. Except the other person in the conversation is also you. You're replaying something someone said to you 3 weeks ago. You're planning a trip you probably won't take. You're solving a problem at work that doesn't need to be solved until Thursday. And somewhere between wondering why you said that thing in 2014 and mentally redecorating your living room, you realize it's now 3:30 a.m. Sound familiar? Most people assume late-night thinkers are just insomniacs with anxiety problems, that they simply can't turn their brain off. And sure, on the surface, that's what it looks like. But psychology tells a very different story. What's actually happening inside the mind of a late-night thinker is far more fascinating and far more intentional than most people realize. Let me show you what's really going on. First, let's talk about the daytime. Your day is loud. Even when it's technically quiet, it isn't really. There are notifications, obligations, conversations, decisions, and 100 tiny mental tasks running in the background at all times. Your brain is essentially a browser with 40 tabs open, and most of them are playing audio. In that kind of environment, deep thinking isn't just difficult. It's nearly impossible. Your mind is constantly in reactive mode, responding to the world around you rather than reflecting on it. Psychologists call this a state of cognitive load, and for many people, that load doesn't lift until the world finally goes to sleep. And that's exactly when you come alive. The quiet of late night isn't just a backdrop. For late-night thinkers, it's a condition. It's the specific environment the mind needs to do its most honest, most unfiltered, most expansive work. The darkness removes visual stimulation. The silence removes social pressure. And suddenly, your thoughts aren't competing with anything. They can finally breathe. There's also something happening neurologically that most people don't know about. Research on the brain's default mode network, which is essentially the system that activates when you're not focused on a task, shows that this network is responsible for some of our most complex thinking. Things like self-reflection, imagination, empathy, future planning, and creative problem solving. And here's the thing. The default mode network thrives in low-stimulation environments. In other words, your brain was literally built to do its deepest work when there's nothing else demanding its attention. Late night isn't when your thinking breaks down. It's when it finally gets the space to open up. Think about how many great ideas have been born at 1 a.m. How many difficult emotions finally get processed in the dark. How many people have figured out exactly what they want to say or exactly who they want to be in those quiet hours when the world stopped asking things of them. There's a reason so many writers, philosophers, and artists throughout history were notorious night owls. It wasn't a quirk. It was a feature. Now, late-night thinking isn't all moonlit epiphanies and creative breakthroughs. Let's be honest. Sometimes it's a spiral. Sometimes the thoughts that show up at 2 a.m. aren't the profound ones. They're the painful ones. The regrets. The worries. The things you manage to outrun all day that finally catch up to you the moment you lie down. And this is where it gets psychologically interesting. During the day, many people unconsciously use busyness as a form of emotional avoidance. Not maliciously, just practically. You stay busy, you stay distracted, and the harder feelings stay in their lane. But at night, when the distractions disappear, those feelings don't disappear with them. They've been waiting patiently, and they will be heard. For late-night thinkers, especially those with high emotional intelligence or deep self-awareness, the night becomes a kind of involuntary therapy session. Your mind surfaces what it needs to process. The conversation you need to have. The decision you've been avoiding. The grief you haven't quite let yourself feel yet. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also, in many ways, your psyche doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So what does this say about you, if you're someone who lives in those late-night hours? Psychologists have found that people who tend toward nocturnal thinking often score higher in openness to experience. One of the core traits in personality research. They tend to be curious, introspective, and comfortable sitting with complexity. They're often the people who don't just accept things at face value. They want to understand why. They're drawn to meaning. and meaning, it turns out, rarely shows up during business hours. There's also a strong link between late-night thinking and creativity. Not because night owls are somehow more gifted, but because they've learned, consciously or not, to protect a space for unstructured thought. In a world that optimizes everything, that is genuinely rare. Here's the perspective shift I want to leave you with. Society tends to treat late-night thinking as a problem to be fixed. Sleep hygiene advice, blue light filters, guided meditations, all aimed at shutting the mind down faster. And sure, rest matters. Sleep is non-negotiable for your health, and if your late nights are leaving you depleted, that's worth addressing. But if you're a late-night thinker, don't be so quick to pathologize yourself. Your mind isn't broken. It isn't undisciplined. It's hungry. It craves depth in a world that rewards speed. It reaches for meaning in moments when no one is watching and nothing is performing. That 2 a.m. version of you, the one lying in the dark, thinking too much, feeling everything, isn't your worst self. In a lot of ways, it might be your most honest one. So the next time you find yourself wide awake at midnight, mid-thought, mid-feeling, mid-question, maybe don't fight it so hard. Maybe just follow it. See where it goes. You might be surprised what you find.